But first, we begin with that deadly shooting in Buffalo, New York, where 10 people were killed and 3 others injured. The suspect targeted a predominantly black neighborhood and opened fire at a local grocery store. The 18-year-old has pleaded not guilty to a murder charge. He has a court appearance Thursday. CBS's Michael George is in Buffalo with the latest details on the investigation.
FBI agents are collecting and documenting evidence from this weekend's mass shooting at the Tops supermarket in Buffalo. Officials say the suspected gunman had plans to continue his deadly rampage.
And if not for the quick response of the Buffalo Police Department, he certainly would have killed more people in this immediate area.
Investigators say the 18-year-old specifically targeted the store because he wanted to kill as many black people as possible. Over the weekend, he pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. Ruth Whitfield was one of the lives lost. She stopped at the store after visiting her husband of 68 years at a nursing home. Family members were overcome by grief at a news conference.
But we're not just hurting, we're angry, we're mad. This shouldn't have happened.
Attorney Ben Crump is representing the Whitfield family and is demanding accountability beyond the suspect.
The people who curate the hate, the people who inspire the hate on websites and internet services and cable news stations.
New York State officials say the suspect, who lived hundreds of miles away, threatened a shooting at his high school last year. Investigators say he plotted this attack over several months, and they're looking at a 180-page document he posted online describing himself as a white supremacist and an anti-Semite. At the White House, President Biden paid tribute to Aaron Salter, a retired police officer who worked as a store security guard.
He actually was able to shoot the assailant twice, but he had on a bulletproof vest, and he lost his life in the process.
The president is expected to travel to Buffalo tomorrow to grieve with the community. Michael George, CBS News, Buffalo, New York.
CBS News political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us now for more. Caitlin, how is Congress responding to this Buffalo shooting tragedy, and is there a push to fast-track any legislation?
Hey, Nicole. Well, on Capitol Hill, as you know, gun legislation is very difficult to get through. After the Newtown shooting several years ago, that was the time that a lot of lawmakers thought that they could pass bipartisan legislation, and they were unable to get it through the full Congress. So every time there's a mass shooting, as tragic and horrific as they are, there are renewed calls for gun measures, but lawmakers know that there is very little hope of actually passing them. Earlier today, Joe Manchin, the Democratic senator from West Virginia, mentioned his background check bill that he has with Senator Pat Toomey. That's a bill that was introduced several years ago that failed to garner enough support to actually make it through. That is kind of a bare bones fundamental background check bill that had bipartisan support. But again, the idea that that wasn't able to get through before shows just how difficult this legislation is. And of course, we are in a midterm election year. We're in primary season right now. Very hard to gain traction with these kinds of bills in that kind of environment, unfortunately.
Well, speaking of Congress, Republican lawmakers Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are both saying that their party bears some blame here when it comes to rhetoric. Have we heard from any GOP leaders on this?
That's right. Kinzinger and Cheney are pointing to their own colleagues in this. Liz Cheney tweeted out earlier today that the House Republican leadership, quote, enabled white nationalism, white supremacy, and anti-Semitism. And Adam Kinzinger called out Elise Stefanik, who, of course, replaced Liz Cheney when she was ousted from leadership, pointing to ads that she ran on Facebook last year, essentially calling the influx of migration, calling out immigration policy, and saying that it would, quote, lead to permanent election insurrection. Now, this is all kind of pointing to this idea of the great replacement theory, and a lot of people are pointing fingers at Republicans for immigration rhetoric, particularly what arose during the Trump era, blaming immigrants and and essentially suggesting that Democrats are supporting immigration in order to win over votes. That's something that we've seen not only teased out by some lawmakers, but also among supporters on Fox News and other outlets. Stefanik's local newspaper ran an op-ed last year calling her out for this as well. Now, for her part, she has said that she, is extending her sympathies to the victims, is saying that this is not, she didn't do anything to cause this. But it's also important to know that she's tweeting out today as well from a campaign account the anti-immigration rhetoric as well. So this is something to kind of keep an eye on. As we know, Kinzinger and Cheney, however, are pretty much on the outs of their party. So whether this is something that leadership responds to remains to be seen.
Caitlin, turning to the issue of Ukraine, the Senate is set to vote on another $40 billion in aid this week. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell told me and other reporters over the weekend that he thinks it will pass, but there are a growing number of Republicans pushing back on further assistance to Ukraine. Why is that?
Yeah, we saw 57 Republicans in the House vote against this measure. And over on the Senate side, as you know, Rand Paul stood in the way of passing this last week, saying that he wanted a inspector general to review the spending for this. This is really an interesting dynamic that we're seeing because you kind of have the hawks versus the isolationists or non-interventionists. This was a divide, of course, that we saw in the Trump era. Trump blasting NATO often and really making America first the centerpiece of his presidency, and really kind of pushed the traditional Republican thought process around foreign policy and traditional alliances to the side. With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you saw that more conservative traditional Republican policy kind of come back into the fold. And so now with this, with a lot of Republican members now kind of objecting to this kind of spending, questioning how long the U.S. will continue to send money to Ukraine, that kind of reinvigorates that dynamic. Now, majority of Republicans want this to go through. Mitch McConnell very much is championing this kind of aid and saying, as you reported in that phone call, saying that, look, this is an important measure for the U.S. to take. This is about our national security and the preservation of democracy, essentially.
In the meantime, Caitlin, the White House is trying to help moms get baby formula. What are they doing? And for concerned parents out there, when can we expect to see it back on store shelves?
That's right. The White House says this is a top priority. What essentially they're doing is trying to cut as much red tape as possible, also working to get formula production overseas from FDA-approved facilities over here to the United States. So working on transportation, they say they're talking to manufacturers and the big formula companies. But on Capitol Hill, there's really a thirst for oversight, particularly of Abbott, which the manufacturer where the contaminated product was found. They had to do a voluntary recall of their product, which in a combination of other things led to this formula shortage across the country. But there's also, calls for accountability for the FDA, because I spoke to Rosa DeLauro, the Democratic Congresswoman from Connecticut, who's kind of leading point on this. She chairs the subcommittee that oversees the FDA. And she said essentially this morning that Abbott is accountable for knowingly selling this contaminated product, but also the FDA is responsible for knowing from a whistleblower report that Abbott was doing this and not informing the public for several months. So a lot of questions about not only how to get product back onto the shelves, and Congress says that they are moving forward with appropriations to help fund that process. But you're also going to see calls for accountability for the FDA as well as the major formula companies, 4 of which control, nearly 95% of the market.
Of course, and we'll hear from the FDA commissioner later this week on Capitol Hill when he testifies before a House committee. Caitlin, Huey-Burns, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
For more on the shooting in Buffalo, I'm joined now by NAACP President and CEO Derrick Johnson. President Johnson, thanks so much for joining us. First, I want to start with your reaction to the tragedy in this predominantly African-American community. Just listening and watching some of the reaction, people are upset, they are hurt, they are in shock. So what is the NAACP doing right now to help those impacted?
Well, first of all, my reaction is, here we go again. When will our nation, the whole of society, begin to address white supremacist behavior? As we're looking at what's taking place in Buffalo, it's very similar to what we've seen in El Paso, in Pittsburgh, in Louisville, and many communities across the country. And so the real question now is, how many more of these will we have to witness and endure before we take white supremacist behavior serious enough to address it? Domestic terrorism has been the root cause of much of this harm. And for African Americans, we understand that when you allow domestic terrorists to go unaccountable, you can be guaranteed to see more domestic terrorism.
And what about the response in the community? What is your organization doing?
Well, the local branch president is actively engaged as much as possible. Our state president, Hazel Dukes, will be traveling there tomorrow to work with the community. We've been in contact with Attorney Benjamin Crump, who's now representing some of the family members. And, you know, providing support is great. The real issue for us is, then what? Will the Department of Justice be ready to aggressively go after domestic terrorists? Will corporate America decide to stop funding directly or indirectly Fox News? Will social media platforms be held accountable in ways in which they prevent these type of white supremacists from convening on their platforms, radicalizing young people who carry out these disastrous outcomes? It's a whole of society approach that we must address. We could deal with consoling families in Buffalo now, but tomorrow, after this die down, becomes the now what? Will we as a nation have the political will to address white supremacist activity, and corporate America stop funding platforms like Fox News, and the tech industry begin to prevent these groups from convening on your platforms?
As you know, the shooting suspect allegedly wrote an online post that referenced the so-called Great Replacement theory, where proponents think that non-white people will replace America's white population. It's not a new concept yet. It's gotten more attention as of late. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, first of all, you know, mainstream media, we must stop repeating these red meat theories. It was critical race theory. It was defund. It's all red meat to create the atmosphere, and that atmosphere have the outcome of this or January 6th or many other incidents. So we must stop repeating the red meat because it's only bait. Secondly, much of that manifesto, if you compare it to the shooter in Pittsburgh, it was a copy and paste. This is stuff that has been going around for some time now. The Justice Department must get to the source of this and shut this down. If you look at some of the world's greatest atrocities, whether you're talking about Nazi Germany leading up to World War II, or what took place in Rwanda, or some of the Eastern European countries after the fall of the Soviet Union, it all started with this type of rhetoric of othering people and demonizing people and creating tribalism. We must, as a nation, pull people to the center of common good and not allow the fringes to pull us apart. And when they use these tactics, identify whether or not it is in our nation's best interest to allow this to continue to take place.
Several top intelligence officials have been warning about the threat from domestic extremism and more specifically white supremacist groups for some time. Here's FBI Director Christopher Wray from March 2021.
Racially motivated violent extremism, specifically of the sort that advocates for the superiority of the white race, is a persistent, evolving threat. It's the biggest chunk of our racially motivated violent extremism cases for sure. And racially motivated violent extremism is the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism portfolio, if you will, overall. I will also say that the same group of people we're talking about have been responsible for the most lethal attacks over the last, say, decade.
As you've also referenced, we have seen a trend of these racially motivated attacks in recent years, whether it was a shooting targeting black parishioners at a church in Charleston, South Carolina back in 2015 to 2019, where there was a shooting involving Latino shoppers who were killed at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas. What kind of legal and political response would you like to see to combat this rise in racial violence?
This is an issue of national security. If these were international terrorists, we would address it aggressively. We need to do the same here. And from African Americans in our experience, we know if you allow racial hate groups, domestic terrorists, to not be accountable for their actions, you can guarantee there would be more attacks. That's why there was a civil rights movement, because across the southern landscape, we've seen this domestic terrorism and the reign of terror and the fear that it created in those southern states. Is now a national problem. It's a national security threat, and we must take it as such. And like with any other national security threat, all the tools in the toolbox should be utilized. It's not to trample over anyone's right. It is to protect the common good and the health of our society.
You have been very clear in calling for action on the issue of domestic terrorism. Have you had any recent conversations with the Justice Department, or do you intend to on this topic?
Well, we have ongoing conversations with the Justice Department. We spoke to members of the Justice Department over the weekend, but at the end of the day, it's not about the conversation, it's about the outcome. And so as we push them to use all tools in their toolbox to address this ongoing problem, until we see some outcomes, we will continue to push. Think about January 6th. It is a part of this. Think about the Boogaloo Boys killing a federal official in the Bay Area in 2020. It is a part of this. Think about what took place in Wisconsin. It is a part of this. We're seeing the same thing happen over and over. And until there is an outcome and action, the conversation, the push continues.
And very briefly, what do you want to hear from President Biden when he travels to Buffalo tomorrow?
I'm appreciative that he's going to console the family, and then I'm going to listen to the now what. It's important that he send the right message. Unlike before in Charlottesville when he says good people on both sides. No, there's only one side here. It's the side of civility, safety, and justice. We need to hear that from him and then talk about how he's going to address injustice, how he's going to address the lack of civility, and how he's going to hold entities like Fox News and these platforms accountable by any means necessary for our national security.
NAACP President Derrick Johnson, thank you.
Thank you.